Across the sea, Columbus has one final idea to save himself and his crew. Once again, he looks to the heavens. He might be a disastrous leader of men, but he is still a technically brilliant navigator and explorer. Throughout his voyages, Columbus has been using an innovative new technique called celestial navigation.
Celestial navigation is the art of finding your position on the ocean by observing the stars and the sun. In Columbus's day, you would use a device called a quadrant, which is basically a quarter of a circle that allows you to measure the angle of the sun or a star above the horizon. Or you might use an astrolabe, which is a similar device except it's a complete circle. If the star is Polaris, that tells you your latitude.
Columbus has been using these skills to estimate the latitude, just how far south the islands in the Caribbean are. And even in this desperate state, abandoned by half his crew, Columbus has continued to take readings. Now he can put this unique knowledge to extraordinary use. Carrying an almanac with 30 years' worth of lunar predictions, Columbus finds that just 3 days away, on February 29th, 1504, there will be a lunar eclipse visible in Jamaica. Columbus knows that if the eclipse occurs when he is on land, he will be able to calculate just how far west his fleet has sailed. And more importantly, he will be able to terrify the Indians.
Bien, bien.
Columbus tells the islanders that his God is angry with them for refusing him food. The heavens are about to send a most terrible sign of the wrath of God. He warns them that a huge shadow will fall across the moon. With a 13-month lunar calendar and superstitious mythology, the idea of the moon producing signs from God isn't hard for the Indians to believe. As night approaches, Columbus waits for what he hopes will be an extraordinary heavenly display. As the earth comes between the sun and the moon, it casts a red shadow across its surface. The great navigator is proved spectacularly right.
Columbus predicted a lunar eclipse, and it actually happened. The Tainos must have been very frightened of him, believing him to have the powers of Baike, which is similar to what we would call a shaman. The Baike's symbol was the moon, and Columbus had controlled the moon. Now you've got to remember that a Baike was so powerful that in order to kill him, you not only had to stop his heart from beating, but you had to gouge out his eyes and cut off his private parts.
Columbus's son Fernando recorded what happened next.
The eclipse began at the rising of the moon and became greater as she ascended. The Indians took heed and were so frightened that with great howling and lamentation they came from every direction laden with provisions, pleading that the admiral intercede to God on their behalf.
But all Columbus's genius has done is buy food and time. He still desperately needs to be rescued. Columbus has been lost to European civilization for over a year, shipwrecked on Jamaica. Diego Mendez rode to Hispaniola over 8 months ago, and still there is no sign of rescue.
You know, it's the great irony of this voyage that Columbus was so enraged by the potential that other people were being allowed to explore the Caribbean, but when he was shipwrecked, he was waiting for those very people to hopefully stumble upon him and save his life.
To make Columbus's situation worse, half his crew have mutinied and are hiding out in the jungle, armed to the teeth. Then, finally, Governor Ovando sends a ship to Jamaica, but it anchors offshore. Only the ship's captain reaches Columbus's camp.
Eso es todo.
He brings a joint of pork, some wine, and the governor's compliments. But astonishingly, no offer of rescue. This is the ultimate insult. Even though Columbus is facing certain death, Ovando is happy to mock him.
Ovando doesn't want to see Columbus in Santo Domingo ever. So he just basically hopes Columbus dies on that beach.
But at least news from Diego Mendez that he is safe on Hispaniola and looking for a rescue ship gives Columbus faint hope. The situation on Jamaica, however, is about to deteriorate. The mutineers, led by the Porras brothers, are plotting to take over Columbus's camp. And even the loyalists are close to mutiny, having watched Ovando's ship inexplicably disappear over the horizon. When Columbus sends a messenger to make peace with the mutineers, this only provokes them further. Only one thing will resolve the conflict between mutineers and loyalists: violence. Columbus's brother, Bartolome, hears that the Porras brothers are on their way, ready to make war. Deputizing for Columbus, as so often before, Bartolome quickly arms those men still strong enough to fight. Having taken on Columbus's mantle, Bartolome realizes that his brother's entire name and reputation depend on him. It is a fight he has to win.